Finally, my RType final review that everyone's been asking for, so you can finally know if I think this final is final, or whether the last final should have been final. Some finals are never final because they're so good, we're already waiting for the next final the moment this final is done. So is this that kind of final?
Yes! I'm so excited! I can't wait to hear you talk about how good the new game is!
But what if I don't like it?
Ooh!
Then
God help you!
so I've heard. Why not play some more and finally get past level 2 on the last one? It's been over, a decade? And you're still stuck.
Don't be a gatekeeper. I don't have to play it. It's way too hard. I just want to tell all my Discord buddies how good it is after you tell me everything I need to know in the video. So get on with it.
This is what I have to deal with. So, what did I think of Final 2? Well, what are you doing now?
Oh, you'll find out.
It's been nearly 2 decades since the last game in the series, and nothing's going to stop you from taking it to the Bido again in your ship of choice. It's gonna be tough, you know that. What RType isn't? But you've come prepared. You name your character, customize your starting ship color and decals, and get properly hyped with an impressive intro that we just don't see in shmups anymore. The game begins with a grandiose backdrop as you enter the destroyed space station, excited for what the game will bring, ready for moody and creative stage designs and difficult enemies. Let's do this. But creative stages, devious puzzles, and difficult enemies ain't what you're gonna get. Within the first 30 minutes, you'll slowly realize that's not what Final 2 is like. And it won't be for the first few hours as you learn the game and slowly progress. Your early sessions won't look like this. Lasers bouncing all over the screen, splattering Bido guts everywhere with fancy lighting. Not often anyway. They'll look more like this for many hours as you spend most of your time without power-ups, learning how to recover from each and every checkpoint after you die. Hey, that's RType. It's all good. And to the game's credit, it gives you the tools to learn. The checkpoint locations are generous and well designed, with nearly every one recoverable on the normal difficulty. The continues are copious, giving you so many after the first couple playthroughs, they may as well be infinite. You can try, and try again from your checkpoint until you get it. Even after a game over and continue, you start right at your checkpoint and not the start of the level. If you're a veteran, it won't take too long at all, as this game isn't nearly as hard as the classic RTypes. Not on normal anyway. If you're a novice though, prepare to be frustrated for many hours while you replay each checkpoint dozens of times with a weak ship until you figure out the segment. Just you and your trusty pea shooter as punishment for death. But again, it's RType. What did you expect? That's how it rolls. But how much you ultimately enjoy Final 2, assuming you enjoy the die and retry formula of classic checkpoint games, is how long you're willing to persevere through the initial 5 stages of the game. As to be blunt, only one of them is all that interesting. After the bravado of the opening is a rather bland, boxy corridor without much going on aside from some interesting camera shifts. It may be a modern release, but compared to the cool designs of the original games, RType 3 on the SNES, or Delta, The opening stage is lackluster. It wasn't necessarily that great in the original Final either, but it was certainly a cut above Final 2. Stage 2 doesn't do much to up the ante, with a pretty generic backdrop and some tanky pineapple plants that'll be the bane of your existence. Compare this to Stage 2 of the original RType and how cool and alien it was. Or Stage 2 of Third Lightning, with its organic walls and dripping caverns. The plain stage boss doesn't do it any favors either, feeling like more of a mid-boss that goes on for too long. Essentially 2 boxes that spew tentacles. Now I've got nothing against tentacles if they're done right. RType is known for some of that imagery. But no such luck here. At least there's a puzzle element to this boss fight, so I can dig it, but it's not that interesting. Compare again to the original RType, Gomander, or Part 3 with its sperm-spewing eyeballs. Heck, compared to just about any second boss from the series, it's kind of a dud. When you're outdone by a hanging nutsack, you know you've hit rock bottom. Ah, finally, Stage 3, the battleship stage, looks promising, taking on a large ship while enemies fly in from above and below, eventually making your way out of the station with the expected mothership to slowly disable and destroy. But something is off. Why is the level so sparse? Why does the background seem unfinished? Why is the mothership so geometric and lacking in detail? The mothership from the first Final, made almost 2 decades ago, looked a lot better and more detailed than this. Various visuals from the stage seem unfinished, like it was a fine concept, but not yet complete and needed more development time. This may very well be your first experience with Final 2, as it was mine. I was starting to get nervous, wondering if the entire game would be this way, and maybe I may not want to make this review at all. Stage 1 was bland, Stage 2 was kind of a slog, Stage 3 looks unfinished. What's going on here? I'll bet that's what you're thinking too watching this. So let me put your mind at ease. At least for me, this initial disappointment didn't last. Final 2 is a tale of 2 games, or maybe even more. The biggest problem is that all the best content, the best gameplay, the most creative stages, and baddest bosses are all backloaded. As you'll see next, Final 2 actually has a lot of better designed, fun stages in store, but you have to get there. It's almost like they had 2 different teams, one that created all the late stages and another for the initial few. Or maybe the same team as they learned and improved as the development progressed, finally reaching their potential as they approached the end. As that's exactly what Final 2 feels like, reaching its potential toward the end. And it was good enough that I'm glad I made the trip. Stage 4 is a big step up both in terms of stage graphics, creativity, and level design. There's suddenly much more detail and the stage feels alive. The game becomes more organic, physics-based obstacles that become a puzzle to work around. It's only let down by its lackluster boss, which was a creative idea, but again feels more like a mid-boss on your way to something greater. But it was the first stage that really felt like RType, and was not generic. Stage 5 kind of takes a step back in terms of design, with a lot of empty space and sparse enemies. It has the RType atmosphere and harkens back to the second level of RType 2, with its bouncing enemies and underwater vibe, but there just isn't that much to chew on. However, toward the end of the level, you'll reach a milestone, the point where it becomes that other game, much more RType. You'll be presented with 4 colored orbs, and 3 of them will lead to alternate branching paths and a different endgame. That's right, from this point forward, there are still 6 Count them, 6 more stages to explore, and they are mostly much, much better than what's come before. Now things got interesting. Sadly for me, I first chose what turned out to be one of the harder paths, taking me to a vertical stage 6.1 that once you die, and of course at first you will die, is quite a difficult task to recover from. The descent is full of turrets firing from both sides, as the shots bounce around the triangles, ricocheting in different directions. It's much easier with a powered ship, but until you get good, you'll be learning it the hard way. And let's be frank, your ship in Final 2 is an absolute pig. The hitbox is massive, even by RType standards, often the reason for an unexpected death. But it's so fat, round, and plump, you couldn't maneuver it through the broadside of a pigsty without waking Cletus. And you know what Cletus has on his mind after a nice long nap. And you know what? I still loved it, because the damn stage is fun, along with one of the cooler bosses in the game. Without giving too much away, no matter which stage 6 path you choose, you're in for a fun time, along with the kind of cool bosses that you've come to expect from an RType. And they each lead to a unique Stage 7 finale. I'm not going to give everyone away and describe them in detail, but one was so good, I can't help but rave about it. The ship graveyard was my favorite, with thousands of your allies littering the stage, while a giant slug slowly evolves and grows as it absorbs more force and takes on characteristics of those weapons. You can see various ships inside its belly as it crawls along, and little details, like the head becoming the R9 Happy Days. All this to the backdrop of a deep red space and millions of stars, like you're floating inside a giant asteroid lost in the farthest reaches of the universe, where the Bido has collected and feeds on the energy of your destroyed ships. Played to what's in my opinion the very best music track of the entire game, both epic and melancholy. This stage is a beautiful homage to the series and vintage RType, worthy to be mentioned with the best other final stages of previous games. It's quite the masterpiece, and was worth playing Final 2 for this stage alone. By the second go-round, you'll already have more powerful ships unlocked, and this is where the game gets a lot more interesting overall. Some of these ships are massively powerful, too much so in a way that unbalances the normal mode, like the devastating Leo 2 that has no weak points far as I can tell, the previously tanky enemies and bosses on early stages that took forever to kill now melt like butter at the hands of your insane firepower. Stages that you spent hours slogging through are suddenly a cakewalk. And that's because these ships are meant for a higher difficulty. This is where you start playing on the RTyper mode, with many more enemies, bullets, and tankier opposition. There are 3 RTyper levels total, each unlocking as you complete the game on the previous one. Without a doubt, Final 2 is an R-Type game for R-Type fans, or more specifically, fans of the original Final. It's very much a successor to that game, more a celebration, better in some ways, while not quite baked in others. For a fan of the original games like myself, neither lives up to those heights, nor did I expect it to. That's a tall order indeed, but I did have a good time with it, especially for all the endgame content. And speaking of endgame content, the DLC really put Final 2 over the top for me. The initial pack, now released, recreates the famous Stage 4 from Third Lightning, and Stage 5 from Leo. Both are unique, well put together, and a good homage to the original levels. Thankfully for most of us, this Stage 4 homage isn't nearly as brutal as the original, as the fire paths are clearly marked, and the walls can no longer accidentally kill you, which made the original such a tough area. But both play well, and both have excellent bosses, with the benefit of being able to take old, well-designed content and recreate it. They ended up with a serious bonus. There are still 4 more homage stages to be completed and added as DLC at a future date, and given the fun I had with these two, I'm very much looking forward to them. That's 13 stages Final 2 has in its current release, with at least 4 more still coming. I do want to address some criticisms of this game, as while the ones I already mentioned are valid, I feel that some others are not. First and foremost are the checkpoints and recovery, which I felt were very well done. You can tell that a seasoned designer was involved in fine-tuning each segment, and I had an interesting time figuring out how to recover from every one. It's always possible and rarely unfair, thus showing an attention to good game design, and deserves credit. In fact, many segments are much more fun this way, forcing you to properly route a way through versus obliterating everything in your path, eliminating much of the challenge. RType has always been about checkpoint recovery until you become very good, so the attention to detail in this aspect was much appreciated. There are 2 to 3 exceptions, like stage 7.1, where most of the stage is a set piece with long periods of downtime, just to enjoy the scenery. But once it does get complex later, and you inevitably die a few times figuring out what to do, you'll be set all the way back, watching the set piece unfold over and over, before reaching that point again. But by and large, barring some exceptions, this is an area of the game very well done, critical to an R-Type game, and it succeeds overall. And these few nitpicks are something that can easily be patched if they listen to the players. Another area of contention are the moments of downtime without many enemies. R-Type is about atmosphere and the experience, not just the gameplay. Some stages, like the final one in Delta, are very easy and more for story than challenge. Yet, they're brilliant. Stage 7.0 in Final 2 is a good example of it being well implemented for effect. R-Type has plenty of these moments, and for anyone that's not a super player focusing on score and trying to minimize practice time, it's really not something I would hold against an R-Type game. Anyone who does enjoy the series and its quiet, introspective moments will think nothing of it, and if it was missing some of the better ones, it would feel like a different game and lose some of its personality. A valid issue, and one I had often during my early gameplay, is not knowing what can kill you and what can't. Some areas are clearly background, while others clearly not. It's everything in between that took some trial and error. In early R-Type games, it was a non-issue, as touching anything killed you, so you knew. Here, it's a byproduct of trying to make it a bit easier and make the environment non-lethal. It falls into the trial and error type of gameplay R-Type is about. So while I would have liked to see it handled better and made more obvious, once you know, you know. Final 2 is full of gotcha moments from start to finish, even more so than previous games. You'll be killed out of nowhere, one way or another, on the first go round. A quick note on the versions. The gameplay you see here is for the Steam version on PC, which has fantastic lighting effects and performs the best given a good computer. The load times were non-existent, throwing me right back into the game near instantly after death. I can confirm from many sources that the Switch version has the longest load times, upwards of 10 to 15 seconds, which is a very big deal. In a game where you die, and die a lot, having to wait that long every time can drive one certifiably nuts. It's supposed to be improved in future patches, but at this juncture, I could certainly recommend going with the more powerful PlayStation or Xbox ports, or on PC. While there are also graphical differences in terms of improved lighting and effects, resolution and frame rate, with the Switch version being less stable. I wouldn't say any of the ports look bad, but most may find that the Switch version creates an extra level of frustration with the load times, making it the least desirable choice, unless you must have it portable. So what did I think overall? How would I rate the game? Well, I don't consider myself a reviewer, so I don't rate games. I don't give scores. There are other great channels, like Bullet Heaven, that specialize in it and do it well. If I hated the game, I likely wouldn't have played it for long, nor made a video about it. There are brilliant games out there that do everything right and would rate very high objectively, yet I don't enjoy them much. Then, there are games like Final 2 that are clearly unfinished and needed more development time. Unbalanced, where some aspects are fantastic, with lots of attention to detail, while other aspects half-baked and not ready for prime time. If I had to rate it on a technical level, I could pick it apart for another half hour in this video. And yet, Final 2 is a game that's much more than the sum of its parts, despite the technical flaws and incompleteness, which would garner it an average score at best. I enjoyed it. It made me want to come back, and the more I played it, the more it grew on me, like an alien egg waiting to burst forth. So for me, it scored well on the replayability. Is it for everyone? Absolutely not. If you dislike the first Final, Part 2 won't do much to change your mind. If you aren't a player of shmups in general, it will frustrate you beyond belief, and you'll likely never get to the good stuff. But if you're a fan of RType, the traditional RType, and a big fan of Final, of which there are many fans, then Final 2 is absolutely for you, and you've already likely bought it anyway. I wasn't a big fan of Final, and yet I found much to enjoy here. It's a love letter to fans, made by fans, that worked very hard to put this game together, and they ran out of time. It's not nearly complete. The Kickstarter campaign did very well, but is having issues keeping up. Some backers are still waiting for their game, or codes to unlock their special perks and content. I'm not completely in the loop on all those issues, and whether acceptable or not, their team is clearly overwhelmed by timelines and demand. Lead designer Kazuma Kujo indicated he had plans to solidly update and continue to work on the game for the next 2 years, adding content, DLC, making improvements, and who knows what else. But despite not everything feeling complete, a shooting game with this much content, even in its current form, is few and far between. 13 stages with DLC, 40 to 50 ships, unlockable and customizable from the museum, several difficulty levels, a score attack mode where you can replay any levels you finished, and even create your own custom stage layouts to play through. There's a lot here for a game that was only funded 2 years ago. And I enjoyed the game enough, especially the late game, where I'll be on board to check out all the new DLC and content as it releases. So that's my personal opinion and endorsement as a game worth playing, either now or maybe down the road once some of the issues have been resolved. So what do you think? Have you played it yet? Does it look like your type of game? If you love RType in general and still haven't seen my complete history of RType video, you can check it out here. And if you're looking to buy a physical copy of Final 2, you can get it from Amazon or PlayAsia. I included some links in my description, and if you use them, I get a small cut that helps fund videos like these. And if not, I still appreciate you watching and enjoying this far, as it helps me as well. Now time for me to get back to this game and try it on the harder settings. And I'm very much looking forward to the DLC yet to come.
Oh, you'll find out.